Hello folks and welcome to Paddock Pass from this, the 8th and final day of pre-season testing for 2017. It's been quite an incredible 2 weeks, absolutely fascinating to see what the teams have delivered, to see what they have put on track and to see quite how much they still have to go until we get to Australia. Nobody has had a problem-free fortnight. Everybody has had some issues at some point, and with that in mind, have a little bit of a recap and a little bit roll through the paddock and see where we think everybody stands. We'll start down the far end with Sauber, who obviously had a horrible season last year without really the financial backing to make the developments and keep themselves in the hunt for points, only scoring them at the end of the season to pull them above Manor. And really save their embarrassment. This season the car appears much more together. They're in the same position as Toro Rosso was last season, with a year-old Ferrari engine in the back. And that little element of reliability has certainly been the strong foothold for them in what they needed to be a very positive pre-season testing period. The car out on track, it looks very nervous, if I'm honest. On the front end in particular, into the first couple of corners, it's really struggling to keep the grip in the front. It doesn't look like an easy car to drive. But speaking to Marcus Ericsson over this week, he said it's a much better car than the one he had underneath him last year, and that can only be a good thing. Next up is Renault. As with all the engine providers this year, a huge difference in concept, taking all that they'd learnt over the previous years of the hybrid era to almost entirely recreate the power unit. 95% is the figure that Renault put on the newness of their unit for this year. And with that in mind, the yellow and black team have had a few issues with their power units and with the car as well. Jolyon Palmer said that the car is much more compliant and much more drivable than the one he had underneath him last year. Again, a team that was really let down by a car that wouldn't allow their drivers to show what they had. Nico Hülkenberg, there's been some frustrations for him that he hasn't had as much running as he would have hoped for. When they are running, the times have looked good, not stellar, but good. We still don't know whereabouts they are, but a possible expectation may be the lower part of that mid-grid fight. From Renault then, we'll move up to McLaren, who have had a horrible pre-season. As we said, you know, the engine manufacturers have gone away and recreated these power units, and yet Honda have seemingly gone back to square one with their power unit and the problems that they had in the first year. Just turning a few laps has been a good result for them at the moment, and of course, if the power unit isn't reliable, you can't put the miles on the car and understand where you are with the car. Moreover than that, as Fernando Alonso has said, not only is the power unit unreliable, it's also underpowered. So if you can't run the car as fast as it's supposed to be running, then your feedback on how the car is actually performing at those high speeds doesn't exist, because you can't run the car at those high speeds. Stoffel van Dorn told us yesterday, listen, Australia is going to be an extended test session for us. Yes, it's my proper debut and I'm excited about it, but it is basically just testing for us. When will Honda get it right? When will McLaren be able to learn whether they've got an actual proper car underneath them? Time will tell, but yeah, it's not looking good for McLaren fans at the time being. So, from McLaren we then move up to another great bastion of British motor racing excellence, to Williams. New rookie Lance Stroll at the team, had a difficult first week, put it in the wall a couple of times, but this week, much improved performance from Lance Stroll, really measured, a lot of laps, not many mistakes. He's looking pretty solid. Spoke to him yesterday, he's feeling confident about going to Australia, that he can put on a good show. So too is Felipe Massa, who's been running a huge number of laps. The car has looked reliable, easy for me to say, reliable. Out on track it also looks really together, one of the most together cars out there, and they've been running fast, super fast. Are those times though on low fuel? Williams says they have been going on a couple of glory runs. Will they be able to keep that pace then and take it to the guys that we don't think we've seen everything out of just yet? I would suggest not. Williams possibly firmly placed in that mid-grid fight, probably middle to top of that group from what we think at the moment. From Williams then, we'll move up the paddock to Ferrari, and Ferrari is the great unknown right now. How much have they got in hand? Mercedes say they're the team to beat. Mercedes say Ferrari are hiding their true hand. Red Bull say Ferrari are hiding their true hand. They've got a beautiful car, a really intelligent, intricate design philosophy on it, Ferrari may just have got things right this season. We will only know when we get to Australia, of course. But the omens look good, and I don't believe it's just Red Bull and Mercedes paying lip service to Ferrari or trying to increase people's sort of hopes and put positive spin and positive PR on Ferrari going into the year. I genuinely think they do believe that Ferrari have produced a good car. So time will tell. Power unit looks pretty reliable. Car looks fast on track. But with that speed, a little bit white knuckles. It's fast, but it's on the edge. And the drivers, you can really see them fighting with it at times. Kimi's lost it a couple of times out on track going through that fast turn 3. Haas, the sister team to Ferrari, again another car in that midfield battle that we're expecting, and a car that does out on track looks really together. The big problem for Haas though is it's the same problem which has affected them all the way through their rookie season. It's brakes. Grosjean, lunchtime today, he's in the gravel. I'm not sure if he lost the rear or if he's been on the brakes, but all the way through these couple of weeks, Haas continual complaints about the brakes in that car, and that is something that has affected them since day one. Will they have a new brake supply by the time we get to Australia? Who knows? But right now it is that recurring issue for them, which is a shame because the car, when it's at speed, looks very good indeed. Force India. Big question mark over Force India, I've got to say, because they've been kind of the quiet team of this pre-season testing period. Car looks solid, seems to be running reliably, seems to be running fast. Not Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull fast, but fast. Ocon, desperately impressive, has just been pumping the laps in, showing that all of that work, that training over the winter has done him well. Physically, he's able. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Force India can do when we get to Australia, because I think they're, they could be a dark horse this year. So too, the next team up the paddock, Scuderia Toro Rosso, came out with a design philosophy almost identical to the one that the world champions Mercedes have come on board with, but struggling once again, getting that car to be reliable, struggling with the Renault power unit in the back. If they could just get a little bit of reliability, they could press on, really find the limit of that car, because the combination of that design with a strong Renault power unit means that, Toro Rosso could be, with Force India, those two teams could really play the dark horses to what we expect will be the top 3 for the season, which is, as we keep saying, Ferrari and those two teams at the far end of the paddock. First of all, Red Bull. I'd say almost to a man or woman in the paddock, most people here think that Red Bull haven't shown us everything that they've got, that car simply is too simple, too basic to be what Red Bull have brought, and yet it's working for them. Yes, they've still got some issues reliability-wise, everybody does. The Renault power unit in the back, or Tag Heuer power unit in the back, still has those little niggles. But you talk to guys whose job it is to work out the technicalities of the cars, and they do all their illustrations and everything, and they'll turn around to you and say, I cannot believe that is Adrian Newey's car. I cannot believe that when we look at the intricacy of the Ferrari, when we look at the detailing on the Mercedes, that something that simple is what Red Bull's bringing to the table, and yet it's doing the job. Do they have something up their sleeves? Are they going to turn up in Australia with something totally different? I don't believe that they will, but I don't know, it's a question mark. It's still a big question mark, so it's fascinating for them. And so to the world champions. Mercedes have looked good, but not bulletproof. The fact that they were running race sims on day 2 of testing, however, sent shockwaves through the paddock, because that is the kind of performance and the kind of confidence and reliability that gets everybody else worried. The big question, though, is how will Valtteri Bottas fare against Lewis Hamilton in a car which is clearly poised, purposeful, and pretty rapid. We've seen it over the winter before. We've seen Nico Rosberg consistently faster than Lewis Hamilton, only to get to Australia and for Lewis to start turning it on in qualifying. He told us earlier this week, you know what, I don't like testing. I just want to go racing. And I don't think we've seen the real pace yet out of Lewis Hamilton nor out of Mercedes, because if Paddock Talk is to be believed, that engine's still at 5/8 and won't be cranked up fully until we get into the season. Anyway, so that's a little run down the paddock, top to bottom, and where we stand. I think if expectations are to be believed, there's a chance that Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes are a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack. And so long as those 3 are together and not one of them, whichever one of them it might be, is out ahead, then we could have a really exciting season. That mid-grid battle could be quite incredible. At the back, I think it's going to be Sauber narrowly ahead of McLaren, believe it or not. Anyway, let's go and talk to a driver now, and to a driver who is coming back for a second year with a second-year team. We spoke about them earlier, still having brake issues, curtailing what had been quite a promising start to pre-season testing. Romain Grosjean down at Haas. What are his expectations as we go to Australia? How well prepared do you feel for Australia?
Pretty much as every year, not prepared. We've got only 8 days, 4 days in the car, plus there were wet days this year. It's very tricky to, and a new regulation, very tricky to find out the best things. Yes, the big team are pretty much ready. For us, there's still a bit of unknown going to Australia, but that's the charm of Formula One.
What's the biggest area in which you think you're lacking at the moment?
I think we've got now some good ideas of where we can improve the car. Hopefully, with the updates we get in Australia, things are going to go our way. But both drivers will know pretty much identified where we can gain, let's say, some quite easy performance.
Brakes, are they still the issue that they were last year?
It's not wonders.
It's not what, sorry?
Wonders.
Not wondrous. How do you get around that? Is it going to have to be a new supplier?
I don't know. I mean, we're working hard with Brembo trying to solve the issue, but yeah, I'm not 100% confident and happy with the brake filling and the retardation and the modulation. So we're really trying to work hard with everyone on board to get the best of it.
And with the cars obviously going a lot faster this year, how much does that pull over into your overall confidence in the car if you don't feel you can get the thing stopped?
Yeah, it's confidence. Whenever you go qualifying lap or you push yourself, you forget a bit, the confidence side, and you just go for it over the race. Over 66 lap in Barcelona, for example, having a better feeling and a better control is going to be key to gain a few seconds at the end of the race.
So some interesting stuff out of Haas F1's Romain Grosjean. And at the end of the test, I've been joined by Mr. Steve Matchett, Mr. Lee Diffie. Guys, we are 2 weeks away from our first broadcast of the 2017 F1 season. What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting back to Charlotte tomorrow afternoon because someone's going to have to feed the cat. Can only survive so long without food. Although I did have a hamster that I trained to live without food and water. 4 weeks later, thing died on me.
Didn't train it very well then, did you?
Not really, no.
Lee, what are you looking forward to?
I don't have a cat, so I don't have those kind of worries.
Thanks, Lee. Right, earlier today then we caught up with Bob Fernley. No, we'll bring that in a minute. What are you really looking forward to?
Oh, is this take two now? We're still going?
No, we're still going.
Oh,
yeah.
What am I still looking forward to? Still looking forward to seeing the McLaren complete a lap. The McLaren has driven by me several times today, but unfortunately mostly not under its own power.
Yeah, on the back of a truck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we can get the McLaren up and running, that'd be great for all concerned. The Ferrari does seem to be going very well. We chatted about this the other day, and I think it is genuinely fast. And I think today, if I remember right, they have set so far the fastest time in testing, correct?
Indeed, a 1:18.6.
1:18.6, if memory serves.
Indeed. That's 6 seconds faster than the 2015 pole time, which was the target time to be beaten by just the 5 seconds. So we're well ahead of course. What are you looking forward to for Australia, Lee?
Well, that in itself, what you just mentioned there, that gives us plenty to look forward to. I always like to think about what our viewers are asking. And I think the first question they're going to ask is, are we going to see a non-Mercedes victory? So that's the biggest one, with Steve's point, Ferrari being as quick as they are. I think there's still a little bit of a question mark about Red Bull or perhaps even the Renault-powered cars, just as far as their longevity. So that, for me, I'm looking forward to see if that question's going to be answered and whether we put them into the mix. I'm always interested to see the youth movement and the youth angle. So how good is young Lance Stroll at 18? How will he handle the pressure of being on a Formula One grid for the first time when the lights go out? And at the end of the day, it's Australia. It's the first race of a new season that brings with it so much to talk about. And even though he's joking, he does get genuinely excited.
Just has to make sure you feed the cat. You were talking about the youngsters there. Another youngster hoping for big things after the team did such big things last year is obviously Esteban Ocon down there at Force India. We haven't spoken much about them, but earlier today I caught up with Bob Fernley. Bob, I was just saying, we've got to the end of the week and we hadn't interviewed anybody from Force India, and I don't want you guys to feel neglected, but I think it's probably a little bit reflective of your pre-season testing. For me, you seem to be flying under the radar, quite competitive, quite fast, quite reliable, but going about things quite calmly, quite quietly. How has your testing been?
Well, it's been quite steady actually, to be honest, Will. We've, last week was a bit disruptive because we had a couple of small issues in reliability, but nothing that wasn't fixable. And then we had, of course, a wet day testing, and we had an aero day program. But this week's been very steady. Esteban has done 2 laps, averaging 140 laps per day, and Checo similar. And the data's good. I think we're looking quite strong.
How much does that kind of reliability in this second week of testing fill you with confidence for the opening part of the season?
Very much so, because I think I'm still a bit of an old school. I believe you need to have that reliability for the first 4 races. I think it can be a great benefit for you.
I know you're not going to give too much away, and it's always so difficult to tell in testing, but in the sort of grander pantheon of competitiveness, whereabouts do you think you are?
I think that we're battling for that 4th place. I think that, as we've always said, the top 3 teams are beyond us unless one of them makes a big mistake, and they haven't. Yeah. So I think that's clear. I think it's Williams, Force India, Toro Rosso, and Renault that are probably battling for the 4th, and possibly Haas coming through as well. So I think it's going to be a really, really strong season for that 4th place.
What do you think of the cars? How do you think they look? Are we going to see those shark fins and T-wings continue through the year, do you think?
I don't think there's anything that you can do too quickly with those. They may be adjusted for next year. I don't know. It depends on the desires and of the teams, and also of the regulators. I'm not particularly against them. I think it's part and parcel of where we go today.
I don't want to put you too much on the spot. There's some rumours this week you might have a pink car by the time we get to Australia. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, there's a lot of rumours going around, but I've not seen anything yet myself, so okay. We'll see.
We'll ask the marketing department instead then. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Cheers.
Take care.
So Bob Fernley from Force India there, leading his team to try and do, Steve, what they did last year, and that is their best ever in the Constructors' World Championship with 4th. I think they're kind of a little bit under the radar at the moment, so we wish them all the best. And as you can see, pack up here happening behind us in the paddock here in Barcelona. And speaking of packing up, Will Buxton, David Hobbs had to do their own pack up, and they've gone. That's why they're not here right now. It was meant to be all 4 of us, but Kimi Räikkönen finishing on top for Ferrari. Red Bull there as well. Reigning world champions Mercedes down in 3rd and 4th. Whether that's representative or not, we will only find out in a couple of weeks in Australia.
Yeah, and it's been an absolutely fascinating test. And towards the very close of this test, we already got an indication of racing starting to unfold there, with Red Bull and Mercedes going head-to-head down into Turn 1.
It was Max Verstappen who was ahead. Lewis Hamilton was following, and Hamilton tried to move on Verstappen down in Turn 1, and Verstappen did what he did to Kimi Räikkönen frustratingly for about the last 20 laps here last year. So yes, it started already. Mate, in a nutshell, were there any huge surprises for you to come from this test?
A very good surprise, I think, for the sport, and most particularly for the guys from Maranello. Ferrari seem to be on the pace. We've talked about that, and we'll have a lot more to discuss about that in the coming races. But for the opening race, I think Ferrari are going to be there or thereabouts. The engine seems stout. The chassis seems very slippy. Mercedes are Mercedes. They've got a tremendous engine. They've got a tremendous chassis. And Red Bull as well. Not too many barge boards and air flow modifiers around the car. The car has been built particularly for low drag in mind, so let's see how that works out down at Melbourne. We may see a lot more barge boards and flow modifiers on that chassis when we get to Melbourne that perhaps Adrian Newey and the guys at Red Bull simply don't want to put on the car. They don't want anybody else to see them until it's too late to copy them. But boy, oh boy, what a test it has been, and absolutely fascinating. On the downside, McLaren have been in all sorts of woes. They managed 50 laps today, but the car towed in twice to get those 50 laps.
And speaking with team leader Zach Brown, he said just yesterday, we're already expecting a pretty tough time in Melbourne and maybe even the first couple of rounds. So we'll see how that works out for McLaren. We'll also see how it works out for these guys behind us, America's F1 team, Haas F1. And before we leave, Steve, we should say too that there's a lot of heavy hearts here in the paddock in Barcelona with the news just today of the passing of the only man ever to win a Formula One World Championship and a Grand Prix Motorcycle World Championship, John Surtees, who many felt should have been long ago Sir John Surtees. So our thoughts are with his family, and we say farewell from Barcelona for Paddock Pass. Next time you see us, we'll have a suit and tie on, and we'll have Hobbo with us, and it's time to go racing in Australia.